Uh, Thanks for being here. How are you?
Pretty good.
Good.
Okay. Yeah. We have Cricket and Handy Heathen. Thanks for coming through. What do you think about all this? What are your initial thoughts?
Well, I'm coming at this from a science background. I have a physics degree, and so it's like a little bit cringy to me sometimes to hear some of the stuff that people believe about the way that they think electromagnetic fields are going to affect them. I think a lot of it is just people fearing what they don't understand. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm coming just kind of from the layman perspective, because obviously I don't have any kind of background in this stuff other than the fact that I actually work for a mobile company. So I know a little bit about that stuff. Personally, I don't necessarily have an issue with like specific superstitions. Obviously, like if somebody wants to avoid, walking under a ladder, somebody wants to avoid breaking a mirror, somebody wants to avoid like having a black cat walk across their path, don't care. I think that personally, you can have any fear or whatnot, whether it's based in reality or not. I think the dangerous part comes when you try to set it up and force other people to believe your bullshit.
Okay. What about? Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
Cricket. Do you have something to say?
Yeah, well, we can't really make anyone believe anything, and I don't think it's really even feasible that we should expect people to necessarily be educated on every technical subject that they could come across. I mean, we kind of see the same problem with in the medical field, like when vaccines come up. I mean, not everyone's going to be an expert on vaccines, and it's just completely impractical to think that we could actually educate everyone about them. And yet we have these dangerous consequences arising from the fact that people are not educated about them. And even when we're not in the middle of an acute crisis, I mean, just the fact that we live in a democracy kind of means that we constantly have people voting on issues that they really don't know a lot about, and but there's just no clean solution to this, right? Like we can ask people to please trust experts, and maybe that is the best that we can do, but of course, like we then have to trust them to know who the experts are and to not be susceptible to misinformation, and that's no easy task either. So yeah, this is just not an easy problem to solve.
But I mean, you can tell people to trust the experts, but the experts themselves, right? They themselves can present information that is presented in a bad way, right? Present the information in a unclear manner, right? And then the information that they're presenting can not give us clear answers. So we went through that whole article. Well, not that whole article.
Yeah.
But like, there are links to things, right? Negative things that are happening, right?
Right.
It's easy to interpret that as there's something wrong. There's something that is going on, and that the public doesn't.
Yeah, and
right?
Well, and to be clear, like getting cancer from radiation exposure is a real thing. I mean, they have a fear that has some grounding in reality, right? And but yeah, like as you said, like a lot of experts are bad communicators, and even people who really are experts can get things wrong, and sometimes the scientific consensus later turns out to be wrong. I mean, there's just all kinds of problems you can run into, around these subjects. But yeah.
I think it comes down to who the experts are and what those experts like what their motivations are. And sometimes they don't tell the whole truth. They only tell either the good or bad parts depending on the narrative of said thing that they're talking about. And when people end up finding out the opposite side of that the expert didn't tell, the person, they go, see right there.
Yeah, so I see where you're trying to go with that, Handy. Is that sometimes there is people do hold back, right? Government officials and quote unquote experts to and it could be for various reasons, right? There could be all kinds of reasons why they keep some information away. But it builds.
I'll give you a perfect example.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a perfect example is the N95 mask thing with COVID, right? It came out to begin with, and they were like, "Hey guys, you don't need masks. It's totally cool. We're gonna be fine, right?" And then they completely flopped on it, where all they had to have said was, "Hey, you probably should have a mask, but hey, can we please, for the love of everything holy, can we please let the doctors and the nurses and the people who actually need it first get them?"
Yeah, exactly that. And that there was a reason why you withheld. Well, I mean, in that case, it was like an out and out lie, right? Like, Dr. Fauci, which is the person we're all told that we have to trust, comes out and says this thing that's completely untrue, right? And it has haunted him ever since. And this thing has dogged him again. Now, the reason why wasn't like, as far as we can tell, wasn't like nefarious. It was that, we figure we give the hospitals a leg up in getting these masks, right? But if he had just said that, that seems like a reasonable thing. He didn't trust in the public. He didn't trust in the public to respect that, right? Instead, he lied to the public, and then as soon as it came out, now the public doesn't have reason to trust him, right? And it kind of just compounds itself. And so,
I think it's not even clear that he was intentionally lying. I kind of don't think he was, but what he said did turn out to be wrong.
But yeah, and so I'm not sure if he wasn't intentionally lying. I don't know. But the point is that one or the other, it wasn't the truth. And then that changed, and now there's this mark against him, and that people will not ever let go. And that will use that to dismiss everything else that he says, and that anything that anyone associated with him says, right? So yeah.
There's this argument that I used to hear in the context of people debating about religion, where this was like back when religion and evolution was kind of like the hot topic on the internet 10 to 15 years ago. And so you would sometimes hear people say, like, how can you trust science when science is always changing its mind, right? And it's this funny irony, right? Because I can kind of understand why people would say that, right? Like it can create the illusion that science is just unreliable or whatever, because science is a mechanism, or I guess it entails a mechanism for people correcting their mistakes and going around and like learning new information, right? And they're trying to contrast this with a belief system that pretends to be infallible, right? But I think that's kind of the lens that a lot of people look at this through. Is they just see that, like, oh, scientists have made mistakes, and therefore we can't trust them.
No, for sure. I just think that the less fuel you give the opposition, on these things, the better. Again, I'm not necessarily saying that Fauci was, bald-faced lying, but I think in the long term, it would have been better if he says, "Hey, we definitely don't have the need or the supply of these masks and whatnot. So let's get these people who actually need it, the professionals in the hospital field, let's get them until we get our supply up, and then the general public, we're going to get you some as soon as we can.
Yeah.
There's an additional issue where if you're trying to communicate some information to the public where there's a high degree of uncertainty about it, then you have to grapple with the fact that people are just not good at dealing with uncertainty, right? So if a new situation arises like COVID and we just don't know that much about it, I mean, the truth would be to come out and say, like, there's a bunch of things that we believe about this virus, but we're not really sure. There's a bunch of things that we still don't know, that we're still trying to research. But if you come out and say that, you're kind of like undermining your own credibility in the eyes of a lot of people. Like if you even admit to having that uncertainty, even though that's an intellectually honest thing to do, it can accidentally subvert people's willingness to trust you.
No, I agree. No, I was just saying, I completely agree. I just wish that, there were people, that more percentage of the population would be intellectually honest.
Yes. So I think I think that you're hitting on a very important point there, an extremely important point. That when it comes to science, right? Science in quotes there, but when it comes to that, so often people just don't know. People literally don't know, right? They're working on it. It's a process of discovery, right? And a process that leads us down all kinds of incorrect avenues, or avenues that, like, the connections are unclear, right? Like, there might be something here, but, like, we can't do the correlation. Like when that article talking about that study, linking exposure to a cell phone, right, like pressed against your head, right, to as some sort of brain tumor, right, saying that the people who had a cell phone pressed to their heads the most had a 40 times more likelihood to get this type of brain cancer, right? And 40 times, and then in itself, right, when they say 40 times more likely, then it sounds like, well, damn near everyone is going to get it, right? But it could be like from like 0.01% to like 0.4% of people, right? Like 40 times more likely. But it's still a tiny fraction, because as the article went on to say, that brain cancer is incredibly rare. So like 40 times itself is an extremely scary number. That might not be anything. But then, so moving on, and I don't know the exact numbers behind that study, but the point is that moving on to the second group, the group that had the second longest amount of exposure to a cell phone pressed against their head, they had the lowest possibility of getting, the least likely possibility of getting brain cancer, right? That shouldn't work. That shouldn't be the case. If that was linked by cell phone exposure, right? Clearly something else is causing that. What is that? I don't know, right? And the honest answer, as Cricket pointed out, is to say that, like, we don't actually know. This is the data, right? But do you want the public to interpret it just any way that they will, right? We know that people have trouble parsing scientific papers. The authors of that scientific paper had trouble parsing it. So do you want the public to have that level of uncertainty and arrive at whatever fucking conclusions they might? That when you tell them the honest to God truth about it?
It's an unfortunate fact of human psychology that people who project more confidence are perceived as more trustworthy, even if the opposite is actually the case.
Yeah. There's a reason why they call them confidence men. Con man. That's what it's called. Con man is short for confidence man. So they project confidence onto you, that they know what they're talking about, that they have some sort of solution for you, that'll solve your problems, but they're about to steal money out of your pocket, right? Like, that's a con man.
And the same thing is true for people who are sincerely convinced of their beliefs, but who are just wrong. Like, they're nevertheless going to be perceived as more trustworthy, and they're more likely to be believed just because of the apparent strength of their convictions.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, though, people are going to believe what they're going to believe. It'd be nice if everybody was logical and everybody could be, shown proof of like, hey, here's why you're incorrect about, 5G giving everybody cancer or 5G turning you into a lizard person. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, if Suzanne hears something from Karen on her Facebook group, she's going to believe that more than she's going to believe somebody who's an actual expert.
Yeah, there's that interesting, I think there was a study that said that for news articles, that people were more likely to believe contravening facts. Contravening, is that the word I'm looking for? I don't know. But counter facts that appeared in the comment section below, right? So you scroll down, right? There's an article makes a claim, and then you scroll down and you see the comment section, and if there's a fact there that goes against the article, people are more likely to believe that. I've experienced that myself. I'm like, I look at this article and then I scroll down, I see some random person and they seem to make some sort of convincing case that the author was wrong on something. I'm like, oh, that's probably true. I've done it myself. It's wrong. I shouldn't do it that way, right? Some random motherfucker on the internet, especially if they don't present any evidence, like, a link. But I've done that myself. Like, yeah, this random motherfucker, right? Poon Master 69, they seem to know what they're talking about.
I don't know if there's been a study or whatnot, but just from personal experience, right? I think you're also going to be probably exponentially, and I don't know what that, times amount is, to believe something that you get from a friend or a family member that you trust, than you are from an actual expert.
The problem is that,
or from a media figure that you trust also.
Yeah.
Yeah, the problem is people can, a journalist can obviously be wrong, right? Again, you've seen that. You see articles, like you have read an article and you're like, this is wrong because of this reasons, and you could be correct and they could be wrong. So then you have a skepticism, and you should have a skepticism. It's weird because skepticism works for and against you, right? It doesn't actually necessarily help, right? Because you should have a healthy skepticism of everything you read, right? Well, if that's the case, though, if we're going to have that skepticism, then when people say things below in the comment section that, go against the article, maybe these guys are right. It's tough to know where your skepticism should lead you, where it should end. There's nothing. I love the idea of people being skeptical of authority, right? I don't want people to trust authority blindly, because that way leads to danger, right? We should be questioning authority, but
very prone to abuse.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. But if you say that, well then, I guess I'm skeptical of the entire medical industry. Well, hold on now. Maybe don't go that far. But you can actually see the tiny logical leaps that lead you to say, well, no, the entire medical industry is lying to us. The entire medical industry. Go ahead.
I also think that there's definitely people, especially nowadays, and especially people on the internet, that they have a conclusion and they work back from there. I already know this is my conclusion. Let me find all of the stuff that supports me.
Yeah, let me justify my belief rather than investigate whether it's actually true or not. They just start with the assumption that it is true and then work backwards to justify it, for sure.
Hey, Cricket, also, you got a camera?
Oh yeah. I do. Just a second.
Go ahead.
Also, another thing is, unfortunately, again, I think that in this day and age, especially with with everything, I think politics is team sports. So if my side of the aisle is believing this one, I'm gonna go with this one, and I'll be damned if I go on the other side of the aisle and believe what they're saying, even though they may be correct.
Gender, you thanks for joining us. Did you want to add something?
Yes, I sort of did, but it seems like you guys are going like a pretty, I wouldn't say deep, but like, well, I mean, I would say deep, but I'm saying like, how do I put this? You're introspecting towards like the motives behind why, and like questioning, all right, well, here's the limit, but when is when does enough become too much? Like sort of overdosing on skepticism. That is like what we've concluded ourselves to. It's like my main thing is like, how do we like actually get the right information into their hands? This sounds like very propagandistic, but I mean, like, to an extent, isn't all information to an extent like propaganda and wanting people to know a very specific type of information a form of propaganda? Well, yeah, I guess my main thing is, how do we sort of prevent that internet skepticism either online or like, yeah, I guess like we can only do online communities at this point because we're going for more broad and just general applications. Because like we can extend this to like private spaces, but then that comes into exposure, conversation, the public square. It just gets a little bit messy. Online, zero distance. The only thing that we really do need to worry about, like our main factor would just be like the rules we set on a public platform, like on YouTube. What they've done is that like either through like obvious bans through terms of service or like shadow banning to an extent in which they de-incentivize like such topics, such information, and such ways of thought through what's called negative affiliation or negative social credit with the algorithm, to use big fancy fun words there. And this I guess leads to my main question. How would you either incentivize or disincentivize a healthy form of skepticism? Like, how would you further incentivize a form of skepticism, or like, all right, this platform's getting a bit too sussy for me? Or like, how would you ask people to ask more questions and know more about a situation? Like, all right, this vaccine skepticism bullshit seems like its own conspiracy, Yeah, I want to ask, how do you propose we incentivize an additive form of behavior, and how do we disincentivize an additive form of behavior?
So personally, I think that at the end of the day, the best way to get all of that incentivize or disincentivize is the free marketplace of ideas. Handles like this. People who are really, really good at debating, talking to people who are, on the other side, going, hey, this is why you're incorrect about this, and now I'm going to make you look like a fool. They're never going to say it like that, but there's definitely a lot of streamers, definitely a lot of people who get on debates, and then they bring on people who are, incorrect on a lot of their assumptions, and then they kind of pick it apart.
I wanted to take issue with the way that you framed the problem, Gender Juice, because, well, I mean, I think, we could talk about whether there's too much or too little skepticism and how to adjust for that. But the bigger problem I have is the way that people selectively apply their skepticism, because they're very willing to scrutinize, criticize beliefs that they don't want to believe, and they're much less willing to scrutinize other beliefs. So I think if we could just get people to apply their skepticism more even-handedly, that I actually care more about that than I care about trying to get people to be more skeptical or less skeptical in general.
So like spreading out the skepticism like a good sandwich spread, you know? I actually, I mean, I understand that approach, but it's very hard for like regular individuals to work that way, you know? It takes a level of introspection and engagement with that introspection that not many people have. Like, I mean, most of the people on a public square, like, I guess they have that intuitive understanding of like, all right, I have the capacity to be wrong, so let's try and preemptively fix that, rather than be like, all right, wow, what is this? A platform? I'm going to use this platform. What am I going to say? The first thing that pops into my head, of course. And what am I going to do? I'm going to use that trust that is usually implied in most conversations and sort of fuck with that, you know? Because when it comes to conversations, as we know, we have a little bit of trust on like the other person has that fair bit of confidence in that they have at least something that exists that supports what they're saying, you know? Like, right. I can, but I shouldn't go into a conversation going like, all right, here's what I believe. And then when the other person's like, all right, can you like give me some sort of proof or like lead me through how you think? And you're like, no, I just sort of made it all up. You can do that. Nobody's stopping you. But the thing is that you're not supposed to, because that's not an assumption that we go into. And this is where most conspiracies come up, in which they're not necessarily a fact that exists, but an opinion that exists somewhere that somebody else is inferring as a fact. This is like usually how most cases of misinformation, or what most of us would be familiar with, would be a game of telephone, in which we're given one piece of information, but due to somebody else's inference and how they phrase it, that gets slowly degrades over time, you know? And in echo chambers, this is sort of what happens to the information, where like, again, our brains, very complex. I'm scrambling a shitload of information here, but what I'm trying to get at is that our brains, one, don't understand irony and don't really understand what is implicitly true and what we extrapolate to be true. Like, is the phrase itself a truthful statement, or is the phrase itself an inference or an opinion on a true or a factual statement, you know? Because I guess with like the whole argument of having a very public environment, the thing is that, all right, you can be exposed to a lot more, and you have the capacity to be explore truer information and a lot more accurate information, but the inverse can also be said to be true, where let's say you start off with a very logical and a very factual based opinion or approach on a topic, going to a public square, well then being it's called influenced by very faulty information, well that can screw you over. It taints your pool, but you sort of cleanse others, you know? It's like trying to equalize the charge. You're very positively charged, you're trying to get into a very dynamically you're getting into a space that has a dynamic equilibrium of positive and negative charges, all right? The more you spread your positive charge, occasionally you're going to pick up some negative charge. It's going to balance you out like that, you know? It's sort of like when you have a conversation with somebody super stupid and you lose a few brain cells. You came into that conversation smart, but you lost a few. They probably gained a few. Let's hope, all right? Or at least cope. But yeah,
okay.
Sorry,
all right.
Went off.
So yeah, you did. You went all. But thank you for that. We have a few people who've shown up. Let's start with Curriculum Plus,
hey.
And then we'll go to the others. Go ahead.
Yeah, Jenner, you said something that I was a little curious about because, and I'm sure this was probably going to come up at some point because of we were talking about people spreading what we would call misinformation and like superstition of different things that we can either accept or try to talk people against. But what is everyone's thoughts about the idea of having it such a way where instead of trying to tackle these people, kind of like what Handy said about debating them or something like that, we try to force these things away from getting even to the people to begin with, like a heavier form of censorship in the sense of saying, hey, if we see this kind of information that has, for all intents and purposes, no bearings on reality, it's kicked out. It's like we try to strike it down as hard as possible, as fast as possible, so that even if some information will get out and some people will get turned by it, it won't be nearly as effective as it is today. Is there anyone that would be against that kind of like push?
Yeah, I would.
Absolutely.
What would be the main reasons to go against that, in your opinion?
It's too easily abused by people who just want to, people could use a system like that to just censor anything that they don't like by calling it misinformation.
Sure. I agree there is a worry about who would be like, who's the gatekeepers in that scenario. Mm-hmm. And I agree that it's that'd be a hard thing to solve, and I don't have an answer right off the top of my head, but the one, if I had to implement today, maybe I would implement in such a way as like, we already have boards that go through like scientific papers and they decide what gets published and what's allowed to actually be like, hey, this is the consensus that we have right now. If I could go to that group or that board of people and say, here's an article talking about what your guys are looking at in the science. Do you think this is enough information here that is prohibited to be like published right now? And then they could be like, oh yeah, that's nowhere near where we're at right now, so that shouldn't be like out to the public. Do you think that would be a problem giving it to those people who we already trust in such a way to publish this information?
No, I mean, I think it's fine to hand it to them and ask, do you think this information is true? But provided that they don't think it's true, I don't think that means it needs to be hidden away in a vault forever.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of censorship to begin with. Again, that's kind of goes with my like marketplace of ideas, right? The best thing you can do to misinformation is show the correct information in a great way that makes them look silly.
Well,
I think that often will fail to work, but I don't think that censorship is going to work any better.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it was either Gender or Cricket. I think it said like a lot of these people come from a stance where it's like they already believe this thing and they can be faced with all the facts and everything, and they can be condemned like a lot of them are right now. They already feel like condemned. They feel like like a lot of people are laughing at them, but they still feel correct. They still feel like, no, you're all wrong. I have the moral high ground. You'll see.
And they may even be all the more determined to hold on to their beliefs because they resent being talked down to or something like that.
Exactly. People are gonna. Oh, sorry, you can go.
Real quick. Another thing is these people are already damn near borderline conspiracy theorists. Censoring their piece of information off of the internet or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to be like, see, we knew the truth all along. They're trying to hide it from everybody, and then they're going to start screaming.
Right, it feeds into their narrative.
Yeah.
I'll have more to say, but I know someone else joined when I joined on if they had anything that they wanted to say as well.
Hello, Subtility. Hello, hi. Nice to meet you. Please, what do you have to say about all this?
Okay, so let's start with some fun that I don't think has been addressed. Let's ask the panel, do any of you guys have any personal superstitions? And I'll start. If I'm out to eat and I knock the salt over, I throw it on my shoulder because there's a bad luck snail that sits on your shoulder and you have to get rid of that for bad luck. I'm sure you guys have heard of that. So
yeah,
however you guys want to start. Does anyone have any superstitions?
I do. I was just going to quickly say, I have this weird superstition of if I'm going to go to Pakistan on my birthday, somebody is bound to die within 3 days, so 1 day give or take of my birthday. It's very unfortunate, but it is a very unfortunate thing that for some reason always happens. Without getting too deep into it, a lot of my family members, thank God I have a very large family, have died at least 1 or 2 days within my birthday. Not fun every time I visit, and I visit every other year.
At this point,
Okay,
they're
well-
probably saying, "Stay away."
Yeah, it's not fun that I'm the only person in our family that's been born outside of the country too. So that's another thing.
Is anyone else? Is that it? Just one person?
I stay away from black cats, but I also stay from most cats because A, cats are evil, and B, I'm highly allergic.
Oof, that is a superstition you should get over. Cats are great.
I'm allergic to cats, and I have a cat.
I don't believe I have any I don't think I have any superstitions at all. I used to catch myself on some of those things, and I tried to talk myself out of them if I did. I mean, I have a joke one. I don't know if anyone ever played BDO, Black Desert Online, but whenever you do rolls for new gear, it would be like a little place that you would go in the game, and then everyone would do their upgrades there. But I mean, that was more of like a community thing. I wouldn't say it's a superstition.
Yeah, I don't
Is that
have
it?
any superstitions like that, at least not that I think of at this moment. But and I didn't know about the slug thing. I knew people did the salt, but I didn't know it was supposed to be a slug when you're okay.
Okay, so well, how it goes is it's a bad luck slug, and if you don't throw the salt, it crawls into your ear, and then you have bad luck.
Sure, that makes sense. So where I wanted to take this, though, you're getting closer to where I wanted to take this originally, was how should we deal with this in terms of policy, right? Maybe governmental policy, but also like organizational policy. So I used to work at a hospital. Talked about this a few times. I used to work at a hospital, and if you go into the elevator for this hospital, right, for any of the elevators for the taller portions of the hospital, they did not have a 13th floor. It went from 12 to 14. 14 was obviously the 13th floor. It was not labeled as such. None of the rooms were labeled as such, right?
There's a lot of those, yeah.
Yeah. And I asked about this before, and the explanation I was given is that, well, look, the people are here to get better, right? It was a floor used for some sort of a critical care unit, right? People are here to get better, and if they think that 13th is unlucky, right? Being on the 13th floor is unlucky, then that could have an effect on their health. So we're not going to have a 13th floor, right? Sure, okay. What about though people from other cultures? In China, there are more numbers than that.
There's a big thing about the number 4 in China. Yeah,
there's a series of those numbers, and you go into there, and some elevators there, there's like 3 or 4 numbers that are missing because of superstition, right? Should we have? Hold on, please. Let me finish. Do we have if we have a significant Asian population, should we also respect that and get rid of those numbers as well? All right, at what point does it stop? But also, is it just reasonable to say that, well, we have 13 is highly negatively correlated people's attitudes here, so why not make this split accommodation? It's not actually that big of a deal, right? Just label it 14, and you're good to go, right? If that's all there is to it, then why not? So yeah, I'm curious what you'll have to say.
No, one thing I would like to say is there is a reason. I guess 9 is also an unlucky number in China. That's why they went from the iPhone 8 to the iPhone 10.
There's 2 things that I would say about this, and I've thought about it when I've seen a bunch of those places that have no 13th floor. 2 things would be, do we want to quote unquote feed into the superstition? Because the only reason maybe people still don't believe that to this day is because we participate that in society and like we perpetuate that idea in some manner. The two ways I look at it is, one, like you say, it is accommodating to people, and it's not a huge deal. It's very easy to do. So might as well just make people feel safer. And then maybe at some point it gets to the point where, like you said, you saw that and you didn't even, at the first time you saw it, you're like, why is that a thing? Maybe we get to the point where people forget at that point. It's like, it's not a big deal, and then we just go back to using the number again. I don't know if it would be either way. At this point, I don't think it makes a big difference for me, so I wouldn't like change anything necessarily unless we saw a big negative outcome because of it, which I don't think we are.
I used to work for a company where their phone number had a bunch of fours in the and so like they had a problem with, like, they would almost never get ethnic Chinese customers because they didn't want to dial a number with a bunch of fours because it represents death or something like that. I can't remember exactly what the story was.
It's similar to the word. I feel like when it comes to accommodating for like superstition, policy-wise, I feel like it shouldn't be supported, but it shouldn't be like stopped, as long as like it doesn't become too harmful to accommodate for it, if that makes sense. Like when it comes to the number 4 or unlucky numbers for that matter, there is an amount of reasonability to it, because when you believe something is unlucky or something is bad, it makes you stressed out. Being stressed out produces negative health effects, and that actually starts to become a concern when you're talking about like recovery or something like that, because when your body's stressed out, negative health effects, blah blah blah. I feel like when it comes to like architecture, let's say, in architecture, this is a big thing. Using prime example, some buildings don't have the number 13, some buildings don't have the number 4, 9, so on and so forth. When it comes to that, there should be nothing legislatively or bureaucratically speaking that should stop an individual from removing, let's say, the 13th floor. Like, there's no reason to have a 13th floor and have it labeled specifically the 13th. Like, it can be numerically 13 floors, but you just skip that number, you know? And there's no difference to its function. But let's say, I don't know, you're fucking some superstitious douchebag and is like, all right, specifically, actually, no, I'm gonna spin this another way. Think people with OCD. Usually, people that have OCD have a ritual, not usually, but on occasion, people with OCD have a ritual or a specific thing that brings hyperparanoia or very bad luck to them. And then they have to do a specific ritual or something along those lines, something equally, if not more irrational to counter it, you know? So let's say a person has a paranoid fear of like, all right, I don't like having dogs on high levels with me, and that is a superstition of theirs. I would say that it's reasonable enough for a institution to be like, all right, that is a very stupid superstition, but because of the way that that superstition affects other rules, it shouldn't be allowed in, because you can't stop a person from, let's say, having a service dog on the 4th floor of a building, you know? It's a high place, it's a dog, and that's a big no-no for you. But you can't stop that from occurring because of other protections that other individual has, all right? So, this sounds very far, like fucking far off and very disjointed, and I apologize for that. So, just circling back to a more cohesive idea, how would you say that, to what extent would you say a superstition stops, it's called, becomes very problematic to the point that it specifically needs to be regulated? Like, where the superstition itself is a problem and not other factors that the superstition is a problem for.
I can't think of any superstitions right now that would be that problematic. to where we would ever need legislation.
We're wasting too much salt on the slugs. We need to conserve our resources.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, imagine if, I guess, if you had a group of people that were really superstitious about black cats, they formed a cult to hunt black cats. Okay, there's a problem, but I don't think that would ever necessarily happen. It seems.
but that wouldn't be that I don't think that would ever have happened to where they would get rid of the black cat superstition. They would just say, hey, you can't hunt cats.
Do we want to compare this to like historical witch trials? I mean, does that count as a superstition, like a belief in witchcraft?
Yeah, I guess we could say that, but I mean, that was outlawed how many years ago?
Yeah, but well, I mean, there are places in the world that where a lot of people still believe in witchcraft, and where people are still, put into witch trials and punished for it. I mean, this is not in the United States, but there are parts of the world.
Well, I wanted to get something that two things that kind of what Prime that you brought up when you were mentioning about the buildings having 13th floor missing, and then bringing in other cultures that have different things. If there was a government building that followed the superstition where they didn't have a 13th floor, I don't know if that would be somewhere along the lines of like, I don't know the exact level. Isn't there something along the lines where governments can't like show favoritism towards a certain kind of religion? So if they're showing like a certain type of favoritism to a culture because they're following this superstition that this culture follows, but they're not following the same culture of another culture that also like greatly presides in America, would that be seen as a problem that they should like look into? Is like, okay, well, we can't have this one because we're favoring this culture's ideology or this superstition that this culture specifically thinks about. Would that be something that we would have to like go in and be like, hey, you guys can't do that here?
I don't think that's a problem. I mean, I guess I'm just trying to imagine like other ways that something like that might happen. Like, what if a business puts up Chinese New Year decorations? Are we going to tell them they're favoring one culture over another? Like, I don't think this is something we need to worry about.
Yeah.
So wait, just to confirm, everyone here, for like the most part, or at least to some degree, agrees that like having a folk superstition is very different from having a religion, correct?
I mean, the religion.
Like...
Yeah, I was about to say religions can turn, can either come from, or
turn into,
yeah,
religions,
the religious part. But
I would say that they can incorporate or employ superstitions as part of their doctrine, but they're not the same thing as a superstition.
To be fair, I mean, a lot of the stuff the Catholics do is a bunch of rituals. So,
and like praying in and of itself is a ritual, but this, I guess, pushes my thinking a little bit more further, because like agreed that like superstitions shouldn't be like in a system such as a government or a bureaucratic council. Superstitions really shouldn't be embraced, nor should they be disincentivized directly, because like there is no reason to or not to really regulate them. What about certain death rites? You know, when like let's say in a morgue, when the individual passes, when trying to accommodate for a superstition, and this superstition then I guess steps on some toes or conflicts with a bureaucratic procedure, should the superstition be accommodated for? Which is more important? Should the accommodation come first, or should the what's called enforcement of a rule or protocol? Like, just bring it back to death rites. Let's say in certain religions, you're supposed to stay with the dead body as soon as like it dies, until somebody who can perform proper death rites can come and perform said death rites. And in some hospitals, especially during COVID, they have curfews. So in that circumstance, if that religion doesn't really have a specific protocol you're supposed to follow, then what should the, I guess, hospital's position be in that situation? Should they be like, all right, it seems like we can't really kick you out because this is your belief, and this is a ritual you personally must see through? but we have to kick you out. So what we are going to do is either A, leave you alone, or have somebody supervise you until you can get your whole deal over with, or should B, occur and be like, all right, I'm so sorry, we really can't accommodate you. You're gonna need to leave because these are the rules, and for our health and your health, you do need to get out. Like, what would be, I wouldn't say the more morally superior, but what would seem like the more reasonable approach to it?
The degree of danger has to matter, right? It has to matter, like, how dangerous is the situation that they're putting themselves in, right?
Mm-hmm. So that will sway or swing favorability to it.
Yeah. So
mm-hmm.
I guess the example that I'm thinking of is that there are churches that where people are not supposed to accept medical treatment, right? And sometimes these people will refuse medical treatment for their sick children, and there have been court cases about this, essentially saying that parents who deny life-saving medical treatment to their children on this basis are basically doing child abuse, and the child should be able to receive the treatment even if it goes against their parents' religion.
Fuck those people.
I do not think that we should do that same thing with regard to like illnesses that are and like basically only in very dangerous situations would I agree that we should do a thing like that. But yeah.
The only thing that I can think of, just off of the top of my head, that I would probably, have somebody step in as far as like burial rites or whatnot, is if like somebody was part of like Norse religion, and like, how they had those things where they literally set up, the burning raft shit, like, probably not.
And yeah.
Well, I was going to question, do you think that in the scenario like where you're weighing the cost benefit analysis of like the danger of it all, do you think that those institutions should be forced to follow their superstition? Like, say, do they have to do it, or is it more up to them if they want to follow it to begin with? Like, if they don't do it, should they be penalized for not following their superstition?
I feel like because I'm using an example with an individual, this really can't apply. But like to the system as a whole, ideally speaking, it should be treated more like this is gonna sound weird, but I feel like it should be treated more like a university that specializes in the philosophy of that religion, because like that way you get the bureaucratic power structure, you get the consensus of the majority, in which like they have a canonical modern interpretation. So on and so forth. Like when it comes to Islam, they have something very similar to this, in which they've academized all of like Islam. They have certain, like they have imams, they have priests, they have muftis, they have people that specifically go to and study Islam. But to answer your question specifically, I feel like, to an extent, as in like they should follow the principles of the religion, but they should also understand that like to an extent, they don't really have any physical or legislative power to enforce people to do these things. Mm-hmm. They are more of like a form of guidance and a form of interpretation of if your religion has holy text, interpretation of the holy text. If your religion is more of a amorphous thing, they provide I guess they are a conduit to help you relate towards or just understand the religion you are with through like an external body, just like through dialectic, whatever fucking bullshit big word. But they should be treated as not as a legislative power, but a power of like social fucking philosophy bullshit, anything more on that?
Paul, you have
yeah, sure, I'll poop all over this. I don't think religion is conflated. You know what I mean? Like religion, like spirituality and stuff is often where people wander when they seek an easy example of to say, okay, like something we don't understand betrayed us and some minister lied about it. Superstition has been lied about in sports. Superstition, like they say momentum has something to do with football. There's no such thing as momentum in football. It's just a lie. Superstition engulfs everything. So I'm just throwing wedges out there, first of all. Superstition engulfs everything, not just religion. Also, I don't believe that Western... see that? That's a Detroit jersey. I don't believe in Western church.
Why did the Detroit... Why did the Detroit jersey...
Because it matters to me in my heart. I don't believe in Western church.
No, I get that.
I don't believe...
But like,
yeah,
I don't get the connection.
I know.
So.
There might not be a connection. But like as real as anything I've ever heard from any minister. Like name a minister in a church in the United States. Name one that I would see real to me. None of them are real. None of them are real. None of them.
Wait, I don't. I'm lost. I don't get it. There a minister
Tell
that I
me
knew from my church.
Yes, tell me one religious preacher of any faith, evangelical, Jehovah's Witness, Mormon, Baptist. I can name many Baptist preachers who are with the leftist movement, by the way. I can recite their quotes. I can recite the statements that they gave to us, that they motivated us with.
I don't have any religion.
Yeah, what I said was real. Religion in Western, like, America, North America, Canada, the 50 states, Mexico, and South America, religion to us is 99% grift, fellas. Grift. Grift. Grift.
So the people teaching just don't believe in what they're preaching? Is that what you mean?
No, they don't believe it. And I believe it more in my heart, everything I just said, more than they do.
Who hurt you, Paul? Who hurt you?
Nobody hurt me. Nobody hurt me, honey. That's real as I just told you. What you better realize what I just told you is real. Everything that's going on when it comes to religion in the United States is grift. 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 Okay? We brought colonizer religions to a nation that already had 50 religions. The indigenous already had 50 religions. And you told them yours was better. From Canada, there's like 75 countries between Canada and the southeast tip of South America. And all of them had faiths. All of them did. But all of a sudden, if I walk into Joel Osteen church, I'm getting the truth.
Nah, he's gonna be taking your money.
All of what we're hearing in America about religion is grift.
Gender, go ahead, give it a try.
I do want to say that this is going to sound a little bit weird, but from the perspective of Paul, looking back at my sociology notes, I've noticed that he falls into something. He presents a very, abstract and philosophical approach to this that we've never really truly considered, which would be civil religions. Because when it comes to symbolic interactionism, if you approach religion itself as a symbol or an abstract, that being spirituality, civil religions would take the symbol and sort of shift it into something that is more modern. With him, it would be whatever the fuck, what is it? The Dallas, whatevers, the basketball people, I think they are. I hope. I don't know anything about sports. Anyways, he made it something akin to a civil religion. So he would experience the same experiences that it comes with religion through that form of superstition. He understands that instead of praising gods, he praises the fucking whatever the team sport go. He praises that image, the image of that team. That becomes their new totem, all right? That feeling of effervescence they have when they go to a match would be the same effervescence a person would feel going to church. They have the same meaning, but the symbol's the only difference. They're functionally similar. And going off of this similarity through symbols, I want to get into the effect institutions would have in these symbols. So circling back a little bit, we talked a little bit about how the existence of colonialism impacted the existence of other religions and other forms of spirituality, namely native spiritualities. And a little bit before, we've talked about how a system such as a government really has no place in dictating the interaction a religion or a sense of superstition has with a greater system, let's say infrastructure. But to what extent truly can we limit or not limit that, you know? So when it comes to a lot of architecture, like in Islamic and Indo-Islamic countries like Pakistan, where I'm from, we have a lot of religious imagery intertwined and I guess imposed on a regular architecture. That influence of sometimes it's not even religion itself, sometimes it's just propaganda or other forms of superstition, like the end is nigh, you know? Some
like
people
gargoyles in every New York. If you go to an inner city and you look up at skyscrapers, you know what you see in the sky? Gargoyles.
A fair bit of gargoyles, yeah. That imagery and that symbology, how much can we legislate that into or out of a greater system, a very diverse system? I'm going to actually stick to the New York example here. Gargoyles are pretty useful in this, but gargoyles on architecture, it's very decorative, but it does have its own superstition. Gargoyles are there to be symbols of a protector. Angel water fountains, that's another superstition and also another symbol. Is it even a bad thing of having superstitions in regular society? We've been approaching this conversation throughout, like, all right, we're going under the assumptions that having superstition is bad, but like, what if it's like not even neutral, but to an extent even good to embrace them sometimes, you know? Again, gargoyles, it's only aesthetic in which most of us would agree, view them in. But from a philosophical point, or like an anthropological point, you can be like, all right, this symbolized X, Y, Z about a society. Like in Roman society, in which they had a lot of phallic imagery. Why? They probably thought dicks were funny and probably aesthetics. Or we can be like very big brain about this, and they're like, well, you see, it symbolizes a very prosperous and very bountiful land. It all really depends, all right?
It's all of the above.
Yeah, I just kind of want to get some other people in here. So, like, where do you want to leave off?
Sorry, I want to leave off on, I went a little bit past it. Is having superstition inherently bad thing to begin with? What if it's a good thing and not even neutral at all? Because there's obviously a flip-flop of like, well, it's not really a neutral thing. We really need to have a stance on it. But yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I think people adopt superstitions for a reason. It's some kind of like coping mechanism for stress or something that's, you know, beneficial to their mental health in one way or another. So obviously they're, you know, there has to, whether they're a net benefit or a net harm is a different question, but obviously there must be something good about them, or else people wouldn't have them.
Yeah, and then I guess it would be a question like what you said with the gargoyles about like being some form of protection kind of a thing. So like if I would I know that colors have that same kind of thing, like where you have seeing certain colors it will enact some kind of emotion to you. If they place that in places and you're feeding off of people's superstition to make them feel safer just subconsciously, I don't necessarily see a problem there. I think superstitions become a problem because I don't think they're inherently wrong. I think they only become a problem when they start making, you start basing your decisions on how you do an action. Then it becomes a problem where you're choosing, you're understanding that that's the decision you're making, and you're making it because of that so-called superstition. That's when, so if I like look up and I see a gargoyle, I'm like, oh, I feel so totally safe today because that gargoyle is up there and I know it's a protector. Then I think that's a problem. But if I just subconsciously look up and then I feel like more protective because there's that symbol there, then that's not a bad thing in my opinion.
No, I mean, I think you can find examples of people making big, important decisions on the basis of their belief in astrology or something like that. So I don't know.
But I would argue that is bad. I would say that's a bad. You should not be basing big, life-changing decisions off of the stars.
No, I'm agreeing with you. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. If nobody else wants to,
Hold on. Hold on. You didn't give anyone a chance.
Sorry.
So, subtlety. Did you want to say anything?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I think there needs to be a difference. I think we need to really understand how we're using the word superstition. If you're looking through the lens of a religious person, a lot of the things you're discussing is not superstitious. It's reality. So, for example, when I was in high school, we played football. We had a sign above the door in our field house that said win. Superstition, we all lined up and we slapped that sign on the way out to the game. Okay, if someone missed that sign and we lost, it was their fault. Okay, but if you're calling something a superstition, there's almost this implied belief that it's not based in reality. If you're a religious person, you don't call praying superstition. That is reality. And I think that difference needs to be made.
So here's the difference. You can't necessarily take what was learned on the basketball court and apply it to religion. I grew up on the basketball court. A lot of the superstitions we adapted on the basketball court, we knew they were superstitions. You know, we knew we were kind of jiving ourselves in a way, but we also knew that maybe we weren't jiving ourselves. Maybe if I wear the same pair of socks tonight 9 times a week, I'll hit, 50% jumpers instead of 30% jumpers. But the truth is, that's a little different than what religion does. So here's what religion does. Okay, here's what religion does. Religion totally has a guy come on YouTube and open up a channel, and he gets 2.5 million views, and he tells you, kissing a frog will get rid of COVID. Okay, that's a loose quote, because they tell you a bunch of radical shit, to be honest with you. That's a little different than me getting on a ball court wearing the same pair of socks for 9 days in a row. That's a little different. That's a little different as far as when it comes to superstition. And you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Am I wrong?
What I'm saying is, if you spoke to a religious person, it doesn't matter what it is, if they were down on their knees praying and they overheard you call that a superstition, they would probably view that as an insult.
What are they praying for?
religion.
A thing? I can argue. You're straying onto a different, which I appreciate the religious topic, and I avoid it for like a year and a half. In my faith, if I have a faith, we don't pray for something to come our way. We pray whatever already came our way. If you pray that, like if you're praying for the 3-point to go in, or if you're praying a blessing on somebody in your audience, you're grifting them.
Yeah, but some people truly believe that.
They're grifting.
Paul, you basketball.
They're
You're a
grifting.
basketball guy, right?
Yes,
Like
but
Mike?
I will call out a grifter in religion.
Have you seen Like Mike?
Yes, I've seen many.
Okay, where he wears Jordan shoes and he can dunk, and he's 5'10".
Yes,
right?
of course.
A little kid, he gets Jordan shoes. That's
Yes.
how I'm viewing a superstition. It has nothing to do with religion. I'm saying that if you walked up to a 10-year-old kid playing basketball and said, "Here's Jordan shoes," he's gonna think he can dunk. He's gonna think he can shoot immediately. That's superstition. I'm not attaching that to religion.
Well, I wouldn't blame you for attaching it to religion, but superstition is attached to religion. But fair.
But I mean, my point is that if you spoke to a religious person and called their belief superstition, they'd view that as an insult.
In most cases,
Yeah,
will
they would
gladly-
definitely view it as an insult.
I, as a person who might have faith, will gladly insult people who are stealing faith. Let me say that out loud. If I have a faith, I will gladly and proudly and loudly insult anyone who uses faith as a grift. Loudly. Like loudly insult them. Like loudly.
We get that. We get it. Paul.
Okay.
It's loudly for those who didn't hear.
All right.
Ductility, from what you said, I definitely agree that those people would.
Sorry, I do want to.
No. Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Finish.
Okay, I just want to say, Ductility, I do agree that people would take that way, but if I would reword it, I don't know if they'd necessarily disagree with what I'm saying. If I would instead tell them, you pray, and you understand that when you pray to God for something to happen, for someone to be cured or something, that there's no way for us in actual, well, I don't want to say actual, in a reality that we can measure things by, that we can measure that your prayer saved that person. You might believe that it truly did, but that's what we mean by superstition. We can't measure the effect of the action that you did actually equaling the outcome. So if I word it that way, I think they would agree with me, just not call it superstition. But that's what I mean when I say superstition.
The problem is, though, that there are dumb people who would argue to their dying breath that no, that time that I did pray did equal that.
Yeah, and I agree. They would say that, but they would agree that, I would hope they would agree that we can't measure that. It's not something that we can look at in the ability that we have in our reality. We can't measure that it actually did that.
The problem I have with that is that there's plenty of things you might do and that you might believe in your everyday life that where you also can't measure any kind of causality to them, but nevertheless you probably wouldn't describe those things as superstition.
I might not be able to do it like in real time, but I think I could agree that if you have the capability of doing it, wouldn't you say? Like anything that I do, there's some kind of like equation that I could run through and be like, okay, that's why that happened.
Depending on what you mean, I might or might not agree with that.
My only point was that I think there needed to be a distinction between superstition and religion. For example, I'm just going to call you Plus because I'm.
Yeah, that's fine. Or Ori, whatever. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ori, I think if you were arguing, a person of religion and you wanted to make a point, can you imagine where if, let's say, for example, they said, I prayed and healed this man. There could be two options. You say your belief did not heal him or your superstition did not heal him. And one of them is a bit more antagonistic than the other.
Yes, I would agree that that is one. And I do agree that there's a negative connotation mostly when people use superstition.
Okay.
There's absolutely always a negative connotation when people use superstition. Everyone I've seen for the last 2 years has tried to poop on everyone else's like pondering of something outside of the box. When I see people ponder religion, people poop on it. When I see people ponder something, like that might not be explainable, people poop on it. It's nothing new. It's like if you can't prove it,
I would never like poop on someone for doing that, but I would question someone.
That's how it happens, though. In these spaces.
Oh yeah, 100%. No, people will. Some people are just fucking contrarians. And so you could say almost anything, and there's going to be somebody that's going to be like, "Nope, you're wrong, actually."
Okay, so before we continue, and yeah, this has been weird. If you've been enjoying this content, hit that follow button. If you're just new to the channel, hit that follow button. We talk about this. Well, not this, but we talk about all kinds of stuff. 6 nights a week, all right? We give you a lot of content. So hit that follow button right now. I haven't done so yet. Exclamation by social and chat for our social media. Hit up our various social medias, type stuff. Twitter for tweets, obviously. Discord for non-unity, and YouTube for videos. Like, comment, subscribe in our YouTube, right? Also, support the channel, subs to the community, right? Subs to this channel. If you are enjoying this content, help us out. Exclamation by emotes for the emotes to get. Oops, if I can spell it right, let's try it again. Still didn't spell it right, but I can count it for that. Yeah, thank you, everyone, for who've been supporting. But yeah, continue to help us out. If you aren't currently subbed, consider subbing to the channel, or if you got, like, for instance, a gift sub, if you were lucky enough to get a gift sub, well, then consider continuing your sub and keeping up with the benefits of subbing and just investing in this community. Help us out, help out the channel, right? Sub to the community, subs to the channel. Or if you're having what was it, an Amazon Prime / Prime Game, you can sub to the channel for free, absolutely free. I know, seems amazing, seems unlikely, but it's true, right? Consider subbing to the channel for absolutely free if you have an Amazon Prime / Prime Gaming, right? And then beyond that, you can gift bits, right? Gifting bits is a huge help. Digital money from our friends here, and well, our friends from Twitch, right? But yeah, it's a great way of supporting this community, of keeping us up and running. So gift bits or gift subs, right? Help us out. We need that kind of support, right? If you like being able to come here night after night after night after night, and having this channel, having this community here just to chill, right? To listen to different perspectives, or to be one of the people who gets to come on and, you know, share your perspective, right? Because, well, anyone can. But if you appreciate having that, then be so kind, help us out, and sub to the channel, sub to the community, right? Support the community. All kinds of ways to do it. Not only just subbing, but you can also help us out with exclamation point Nord. We have we're a Nord affiliate, right? So you can get NordVPN and support the channel at the same time. So consider doing that, helping us out that way, right? You can also help us out with our PayPal button below, right? Use our PayPal button below. More of your money gets to us when you use PayPal, right? More of your money gets to us when you use that PayPal button. So consider doing that. That would be great. And exclamation point donate in chat for our for the donation link. That's another way of doing the same thing. Help us buy a new computer. We got like a laptop here that has been a little less than ultra reliable, right? So if you want to support, keep this channel up and running, hey, I need your help to make that happen. Be so kind, help us out, and sub to the community, right? If you like the Reverie, which we have on Mondays, right? When fighting and the yelling and whatnot, and the interesting guests that we managed to get on, right, and those topics, well, then help out the community. Invest in the channel by subbing to the channel. If you like all black everything, we should be doing tomorrow, well, then sub to the channel. If you like the small council, where it's a little less debating, more, you know, discussion, more like kind of how tonight's been, actually, really, then sub to the channel, or gift bits, or gift subs, right? Or again, use our PayPal button to help us out. Yeah, do all that stuff to assist the community. The community doesn't stick around without your assistance. So if you're out there and you have some money to spare, be so kind as to invest in this community, right? If you value this community, invest in this community, so this community sticks around, right? Because this is how we do this. This is how I support it. This is how I like hire an editor, for instance, to do the YouTube. So if you like the fact that you have a place to go and watch the VODs later on, all right, well, that's directly an investment from you, right? So help us out, subs to the channel, or gift bits or gift subs, yeah, and keep this all around, right? I literally can't do it without you. So yeah, thank you. All right, hey Brento, hey buddy, I haven't seen you in a little bit. Hey, how are you?
Yeah, it's been a little bit. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, good seeing you.
Nice seeing you too.
I don't really know. I mean, I haven't been following the panel up until this point, but I saw the topic. I figured I'd hop in and say what's up.
All right, yeah, we were talking about superstitions, and not just, well, superstitions and kind of conspiracy theories mixed in with that. And wondering like how much of that should we accommodate, right? So we talked about, like, for instance, like not having a 13th floor instead of having a 14th floor, right? It's still the 13th floor. But the fact that it gives some people a peace of mind, you know, and is that in itself worth it? And talked about other superstitions people have, right? Like something more benign, like sports related, like I need to wear this jersey or my team won't win. Even though my team doesn't win and I wore the jersey, I don't necessarily blame the jersey. But
Sure.
but just like how much of that should we actually accommodate in our society, and all
Okay.
that.
Right. So it's just about the validity of beliefs,
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah,
What are your thoughts?
essentially. Yeah. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I think that's no shit. I mean, like, not to just jump right to it, but that's literally all that, like, human society is structured towards supporting, right? Like, which thoughts or beliefs are valid, and how do we distinguish them, and how do we implement them, and how do we work together with them? That's like literally government, right? That's what government is.
What? Sorry?
That's government.
Sorry. No, try it again. What is government?
Okay. Government would be, it's the representation of people's beliefs, or you could call it their beliefs, or you can call it their experiences, right? But I mean, with this, at a certain point, it's semantic, and says, it's like, okay, so if we'll take America, for example, and I know you can have many critiques, and that's fine, and you're probably right in many of them, and maybe not all of them, I'm not sure. But anyway, you would have people in the multiple states, or the multiple states in their representations, and then they elect an official, and that official represents them, and that official votes for them within a Congress, and that Congress then takes their beliefs or their values or their thoughts or anything that you want to call that, and then they represent it to the government, and then it's proposed in a bill, and then they elect a president. That president ratifies or rejects or vetoes, and then the judicial reviews that within the Constitution, and then they ratify or they reject that, and then that's a cyclical process that happens within, like a checks and balances system. The entire government, the entire American government, essentially all governments, although some governments are monarchies or parliamentary, are systems for basically promoting, ratifying, and then instantiating or rejecting or vetoing public beliefs within a larger society to reflect or represent the social beliefs or ideas of the time within a society. That's all the governments are for, are systems to reflect or ratify public beliefs. Science is a system that's a little different than that. It's a hypothesis, test, observe. It's a different system, but governments are representative in that sense. So both systems are for testing or reflecting hypotheses of people's understandings.
I feel like that's a stretch. I mean, like, yeah, like if
I don't know if it's a stretch.
I mean, in terms of like relating that to superstitions, this just seems. I mean, you could do
I don't like the way it was
There's an
explained, but I
actual
think the idea behind it is sound. Yeah,
I would just say to say it's a stretch. I would only say it's a stretch if you think that there are some beliefs that are inherent that don't need some sort of representation or ratification or social consensus. I would only say it's a stretch if you think there's things that you've already accepted as like preconditions for society, and therefore they don't need government ratification, which is true in some regard. Like, don't set people on fire, but that's, I mean, like, within religions, I think inherent within religions, like, there's within certain, Judeo-Christian, or you could say, Judaism is like the 10 Commandments. It's like, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill. And it's like, then within, governments, there's reflections of those, and then they're substantiated within different, like things like don't steal money, don't steal this, don't steal that, don't do this, don't do that, and then they kind of like, they're like specified, right? But it's like ideas of what people don't do this, don't do that. You should do this, you shouldn't do that. Those are beliefs. Even if you want to say that they're more inherent than beliefs or they're more true, even if they're true, they only exist within human society or within people's organizations to the extent that they believe in them. There's things that are true that people don't believe in, and there's things that are not true that people do believe in. And societies are based on the consensus of what we all understand and agree on together, and governments are the mechanisms that we use to establish or enforce shared agreements. That's, I think, what that essentially is.
Okay. Others?
To jump off and a little bit back onto it, like a little skip rope. Just to simplify what he says, Brento's talking more about like Max Weber's idea of rationalization, in which society would rationalize a being's thought into the system itself. The best way to think about this is through a rationalization of an authority figure. So let's say a charismatic one, in this case, a religious figure, would impose their individual beliefs. And in this case, that individual belief happens to reflect on that religion itself, or like that institution itself. That belief, then through a series of methodological individualism, is spread throughout multiple individuals. Those multiple individuals then internalize that belief, and then through a process, over time, it gets instituted into a greater system that is not the individual. Or to dumb it down, is just like you believe something, and that belief, with shared through enough people, a lot of people start making that belief intrinsic to that system as well. All right, it's sort of like they bleed their beliefs into the system, and if enough people believe that same thing, then it just gets solidified into the system as well. If I'm like getting what Brento's putting down correctly, which I don't do that often, let's be honest.
Okay.
But yeah,
only I think there's things. I mean, if you wanted to say, then like people separate science and society, and that's okay, because they're different methods of understanding things. Only that there are things that are if you don't accept that anything is true, if you think everything is relative, then that's different. But like society believes things that aren't true. I think everyone can understand that, because you can look back at societies that thought things were true and they weren't, and that's self-evident. And then there's things that might be true that society doesn't believe, and that's fair, because we're always learning and updating our beliefs and understanding the world better. And so the government is a way of having a representative society where you elect people as a republic to represent you, and we vote within who is going to represent us, and then they represent us within a larger Congress. That Congress crafts or makes laws and works together and compromises. They send that to an executive who is also voted on. That executive affirms or ratifies or vetoes the votes of the Congress, and then that gets sent to a judicial who interprets it according to a basically a substantial or the basis of the law, which is the Constitution, or the basis of the law that's been pre-constructed, right? So we vote on people, they update or put forward what we want to be changed or ratified, and we vote on someone to affirm or deny that, and then they vote together, but Congress can overrule the executive, and then judicial will interpret that and see whether it's constitutional and whether it's according to the law. And then if it is, then it's ratified, and then we live by this, and it's a consensus system. It's a system of mass consensus with multiple checks at different points, because we can all recognize that no one individual is a center point of absolute truth. If someone was a center point of absolute truth, that would be the monarchy, that would be the king, right? And the king is the representative of God, because there was a debate on CTVs with a monarchist earlier, and we got down to the point in him, and it's like, well, what is the king? And it's like, the king must be ruled by divine right, because no one person can have one absolute truth more than another person. So if someone's a king, right, and they're the absolute final authority, that must come from some sort of like divine point. Like, you cannot disagree with them ultimately, right? But we don't recognize anybody as that. So we appeal to we elect a Congress, and we elect an executive, and they check each other, and then it's checked by the judicial, and that is we all recognize that everyone could be flawed, so we appeal to a mass of people who must agree together and work together to affirm what we all believe. And most of the time they don't, because we don't all get along. But when they do, we go, okay, all right, it worked. We all agreed on this, and then we make it happen. And it works very slowly, and it's very messy, but it's a little better than one asshole being in charge and saying, off with their head, fuck them. We all agree that's better than tyranny. Like, we all agree to like a messy consensus rather than an efficient tyranny. A slow, sloppy justice is better than in a fast, inefficient dictatorship.
Yeah.
It's just that everyone wants to be the dictator, so we all think, hey, if I was in charge, it'd be way better. So
Brento, if we had, I guess using that logic, let's pretend America has a universal superstition. Do you think they would legislate for it?
We obviously do.
We have a universal superstition?
Or legislate for it.
I think inherently there must be some to some point, although I wouldn't necessarily I wouldn't be able to identify it. I wouldn't call it a superstition. What some would call superstition, I might call truth. I guess we'd have to delve into that inherently to discuss it, right?
Yeah, I was wondering if I can get your definition of superstition versus belief. Because I think, in my mind, I totally agree with what you said about how the government works, but I think that's based on belief, and superstition is slightly a little weirder and different.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to hear your definition.
I guess let me get down to a certain point, and I mean, I'm not trying to get around your question, but I'm trying to get to the heart of what I think the point of contention might be. And
Sure.
The point of the contention, I think, is ultimately, it's like, I've talked to people, and I would say, like, is there anything, does truth exist? And they'll say, like, no, there's no such thing as truth. And I'll like, do you think that's true? Do you think what you just said is true? And they'll say, yes. And it's like, isn't that an inherent contradiction? And they'll say, yes. And I'll say, okay, so do you think anything is true? And they'll say, no. And is that true? Yes. And it's like, at a certain point, you can't prove anything is true by words. Things are proved inherently by kind of like their reality. And like, that's why it's like, at a certain point, reality proves itself true. It's like, we could get into an argument about whether or not the sun is going to come up, but the sun's going to fucking come up, because the sun doesn't come up because you or I agree on it, right? It's sort of operating by its own principles. And so there's inherently something in the world that's occurring that's outside of your and I's discussion here on Twitch, right? But the more that we agree on it and the more that we conform to it, the more that we're in line with truth. And so we want to create a society that's in line with truth, and we do that over time by conforming to what's inherent and real outside of our own opinions or, arguments about, dick measuring. And so, whose dick is longer doesn't change whether the sun comes up tomorrow. It does. So we want to live according to these kinds of things, and we discover those over time, and we want to live with people who we can share these understandings with more and more and more, right? So ultimately, I guess the difference between superstition and truth is time and reality, and that's a matter of experience. Unless I'm wrong.
I mean, I think you're on the right track. I mean, I think it's basically culturally defined what is superstition and what isn't. It's kind of like asking what is art. It's just whatever we decide it is.
Well, yeah. Ultimately, words are all kind of symbolic, and so we have to. Ultimately, if you want to disagree on the meaning of a word, then like the internet happens, and everybody's just, getting to like a pissing match,
So Brento, can you give an example of what you would view as a superstition?
What I would believe is a superstition? I guess I would say like a superstition would be like something like, hey, if I say like, well, my team's not gonna win. If there's like a sporting match going on, my team's not. I guess I'll just use one that someone already presented. Like, my team is not gonna win unless I wear my jersey today, right? And it's like, there is literally, like, the team might win or lose, but there's no point at which there's any measurable, to any degree. I guess maybe over time, if you measured it like for 1,000 or a million years of you wearing your jersey on the day your team plays, you might be able to be like, wow, there was an effect. But like ultimately, there's no way that you could ever inherently measure an effect like within one game. And so you could never, say like, well, I didn't wear my jersey on last Sunday and the team lost, and so therefore, that's why. And it's like you can't. It's the belief in like a cause and effect that can never be correlated, even over time, and ultimately is not real. Like it's like saying, hey, throw salt over your shoulder. Now, you could always say like, hey, if you spill the salt, it's a superstition. If you spill the salt, it's bad luck, right? Bad luck. But if you throw some salt over your shoulder, it's some kind of superstition. Then it's okay. It's weird. But you could say that, well, that has an effect on the person's internal like confidence or their belief. Or like if you spill salt and you don't throw salt over your shoulder, you might think that you have bad luck, and so maybe you're gonna fuck up. Maybe that will like interfere with your confidence, your ability to perform. These types of things are always something that you can have conjecture on infinitely, but you can't draw like a direct causal relationship in the same way that it's like if I pour some gasoline and I throw a match in it, it's gonna light on fire. That's not superstition. That's like fact, right? Those types of something that you can never draw a direct causal relationship between, even over like any measurable amount of time, I think would be called superstition.
Anyone else?
Is there anything you think it would be?
It's like Tilly?
No, I agree. I think that was a good definition.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty fair.
Okay. We have.
I'm glad I solved government.
Oh, go ahead. Heathen. You want to say something?
No, I guess my only question, Brennabox, is, that last part that you said about, the throwing the salt over the shoulder and whatnot, that all correlated to what we were all saying before. I guess my question is, where in the government, are we
superstitious?
Yeah. By that
I don't
definition.
have an answer. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know inherently.
Okay,
I don't know.
that solved it for me.
That's fine. I don't have a specific answer for areas of superstition that I would see like prevalent in government, although I don't deny they happen. And if you could bring one up, I'd be happy to talk about it, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
I just got done on CTV's debate, and I heard you were talking some stuff about us Republicans and CTV and Stardust and Rob North, so I figured I'd have to pop in here and say, what's going on, fellas?
Hello.
What?
We were. I don't think we mentioned Republicans, but yeah. How are you? So yeah, if you want to add something, we'd love to hear it.
We're talking about superstition.
Yeah, Milwaukee. Go ahead, please.
I am new to this debate. I just got done with CTV's. It was an elected panel, and it was me, Stardust, Rob Noor, and we were all debating. And on the Twitch, it says it's a leftist debate only, so I figured, hey, I'll chime in.
It's not a debate only.
Right?
It's just it's not only leftist. It's just anyone. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyways, so we're talking about superstitions, right, and how they relate to government, right, and how much room should we give them within within policy, within organizations, right? Should we like have a floor that's not labeled 13 but instead of labeled 14 because some people have a superstition about it, right? Should we have these various accommodations for that, or should we get rid of that altogether? Is that stuff completely worthless? But if people think it's real, right, if they think they have an effect and it affects their behavior, is that not good enough for us to accommodate them? Or is the fact that we're accommodating them in the first place part of the problem? If we do accommodate them, then we give legitimacy to things that don't seem to have any basis in reality. So yeah, just like finding the balance there. What do you think?
I'm gonna have to ask what you mean by superstitions, because if you're willing to accommodate willing voters based on superstition only, that is complete nonsense. Voting and legitimizing voting based on superstition, that is completely It's just dumb.
Well, I mean, like, there's
So,
all kinds of
I mean,
things, like, okay, maybe this is closer to what Brento was saying before. I don't know. I had trouble following it in relation to this conversation. But maybe like the thought that the president has control of gas prices, right? Like, people will look at gas prices and believe it's like a tangible representation of like how the government is doing. And it's harder for the party in power to stay in power. Gas prices happen to be high during election season, right? Like, some people have in their minds that, you know, like, if gas prices are high, it's because the president made that way, or at least didn't do something to stop it from being that high, right? And now understanding that the price of gas, you know, is not much in control of our government. I mean, we can do some things, certainly, but for the most part, these are market forces that are independent of us, right? So it's a bit of a superstition that the president can do that. But people vote on that all the time, right? And in fact, not only do they vote on it, we kind of like buy into that, like with like the media, right? Like, we put a lot of focus on these gas prices, right? And the economy, right? And the economy with the stock market, but the stock market is kind of only tangentially related to how the economy itself is doing. There's all kinds of things that we do to reinforce all of that, right? And some people may not consider that a superstition, but if it's not actually based on reality, if it's not actually correlated in a way that correlated in the same way that people understand it is, well, then it's an improper belief, and we make a accounting for that. So should we do that?
Well, I first off have to say thank you for letting me into this group. Mm-hmm. It's an honor, but in no way, shape, or form does the president have anything to do with gas prices. That is all independent contractors, and it has a lot to do with international contracts. No way does our president say, I'm going to raise gas. No, that is not how it works. So that is a complete fallacy. It's not a superstition, it's just a fallacy.
Oh, how is that different from other superstitions, right? Like, there's no way that being on the 13th floor of any building is bad, you know, like, is any worse than being on any other floor. But at the same time, you know, if people have like more heart attacks on those floors because they believe that, like, well, they're on the 13th floor and I've seen a ghost, right? And you know, they drop dead, well, then true, the belief itself isn't related to facts, but like, it actually had a real world effect, right? So shouldn't we account for that?
Person himself, yeah.
No. If you're gonna have a heart attack, it doesn't matter what floor you're on. It has complete other ramifications being involved here. It doesn't matter if you're on the 13th or the 11th or the 14th. If you have a heart attack, you have other things going on. So I don't know where your argument is going here.
I think like a placebo, right? Or
No,
reverse
placebo effect.
or one of those.
Yeah, it's a placebo effect.
The idea is that your stress level could contribute to your cardiovascular health, and if you're stressed out by your belief that being on the 13th floor is bad, then it could contribute to your likelihood of having a heart attack.
Or a more real world example makes it real. Yeah, like if you walk outside in the dark, it's no different than walking out in the day, but for some reason when you walk out at night, it's more scary.
It's also like those double-blind studies where somebody's getting an actual pill and somebody's getting a sugar pill, and they both believe that they're getting that pill to do whatever that pill is supposed to do, and you end up getting relatively similar results because the people believe that they're actually getting the pill to do what.
Yeah. They actually have to test for the placebo effect. Like when they run trials on drugs, they run placebo trials because the placebo effect actually has a measurable effect on the outcome of the drug. People will report having effects even if they take sugar pills.
basically people self-actualize something into reality just
Right,
because
exactly.
they believe it.
That's right. That's
They
true.
manifest destiny.
Mhm.
Yeah. Sorry, to build upon this a little bit, to clarify this a little bit more, it seems like our main thing is like, what is the relationship between religion and superstition? Because it seems like we all can understand that there is some relation and they are not the same at the same time. Another thing is that to abstract it and to actually continue on with a more deeper and broader, I guess, talking point would be to like understand, should a irrationalized belief, so a superstition in this case, is that considered a valid foundation for another person's intent to do something? Like, my religion dictates I fast. Obviously, I will fast. But my religion also says I should spread the word of my religion to other people. Should that mean that in the actions I take in a system also be justified by that sort of rationale? Like, should spreading Islam, and I do that in a system itself, be considered something reasonable? And should that be embraced, stopped, or not even like addressed truly? You know? We sort of circled back on this. You might have been in panel at this point, but a little bit before we talked about death rights and how some death rights in hospitals may come into conflict with the procedures in the hospitals or protocols. What happens there? Yeah, sorry, you were trying to get something in. Milwaukee.
Yeah, Milwaukee. Right.
I can talk. Like, first off, he used a couple complex terms. He was talking about the placebo effect, which has nothing to do with the 13th floor. The placebo effect is a trial and error on a drug. And then he brought up the term manifest destiny. How does this even have to do with the exploration of America? Like, I would love to know that.
Me too. Sorry, when we brought up the placebo effect, what we meant is like an example of just because you believe something, it has physical effects. Our conversation was mainly about like superstition and how, like, in a legislative setting, like what sort of bureaucracy can we add to make sure that this doesn't become a problem? Because we can believe, like, we understand that sometimes when you push a superstition to a far degree, like you believe, I don't know, if it's the sunny day, if you don't kill a grandma, people are gonna die. It's the end of the world. That is technically considered a superstition with the way that we've all seemed to have described it. And that is a problem because we don't want random fucking grandmas to die because it's a sunny day. You know, and I'm saying, like, to what extent can we actually like understand that superstition one is a problem?
No, that is not what superstition is. Superstition is like, if I break this mirror, I'm gonna have 7 years bad luck. I think you guys
It's a disconnect between cause and effect.
Yeah, that's
Context.
basically, yeah, the disconnect of cause and effect is what we've been running off of. Because the cause, like the effect that we're all gonna die doesn't relate in any way to the cause, which would be it's a sunny day. And the solution also is very irrelated to the cause and effect. The solution in this case being
maybe I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I jumped in the middle of the conversation. I'm misconstruing what
No, understandable.
you're talking about, but as far as superstition goes, I don't see any correlation in what you were talking about to anything.
I want to explain this.
He was saying, can I say? He was just saying he was just setting up a random situation in which a belief between cause and effect would result in someone being killed for no point at all or unjustly based on a belief and something that couldn't be measured. Yeah, that's pointless.
And the relevance of the placebo effect to the 13th floor thing is just that your beliefs can impact your health. That's why it's not saying that we're not saying it literally is a placebo effect, just that it could work by a comparable mechanism.
Because my understanding of placebo effect is it is trial and error. We're going to inject you with this, we're going to inject you in water. Maybe people think they're healthy, maybe people think they're not. Like,
yeah.
It has nothing to do.
Yeah.
The reason why that works is because people's beliefs impact their health.
I mean, has anyone ever woken up here? Like, I'm not sure anyone here is in school, but I'm assuming we all were. And you woke up late and you go, oh shit, I'm late. And you go, wait, it's Sunday. And you go, that's way better. And it's just like your belief about the way that things are, like, affects you literally physically. But it's like, oh wait, it's different. It's not that way. That's way better. Now it's okay. You know, it's like you get that feeling of relief.
That is ritual compared to the placebo effect. It has nothing comparison.
If you believe that you're getting medicine to fix something that you're experiencing, but you're not, you might, in the same way that you think you're late for something that you're not, and then you feel like you're not late for it. Oh, you get the relief. Well, maybe you're experiencing something and you feel the effects, and you say, hey, you're getting some medicine. Oh, I can feel the relief. The medicine is helping. But maybe it's just sugar pills. Maybe it's not the medicine. It's the belief that it can have an effect.
Is your argument based off of this COVID vaccine that it's a complete fallacy?
It's not based off of anything specific. It's just based off a general human reaction to beliefs, and like there are reactions to situations. It's almost like the situation of taking medicine for something that you're suffering from can, in a sense, give you a feeling of relief from it. The same way that you can suffer from a situation you're not actually in.
And that feeling of relief can legitimately contribute to your recovery.
Yes.
I'll give an example, I think, of that a lot of people, I can almost guarantee almost everybody here has dealt with when they were a kid. Remember when you were a kid and you fell off the swing, or you hurt your arm, you scraped your arm or elbow or something, and your mom kissed it and said, oh, isn't that better? Your mom's kisses had nothing to do with getting better. But boy...
I'm joking.
But boy, did that make you feel better as a kid. You were like, yep, mom kissed it. It's better.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so you want to talk about the placebo effect?
I mean, the placebo effect is just like a correlation, though. It's not like the focus of this. Yeah, we get like.
And agree with Biden's tactics right here. Raise your hand if you do.
Sorry, what are Biden's tactics?
That's just like a broad statement.
Yeah, let's say which ones.
No, what are you talking about? Come on.
If you want to talk about the placebo effect, what good is this current vaccine? Well, I'm getting it. What good is it doing other than making you feel like, yeah, I am safe from this when you're actually not?
Oh, are you saying the vaccine itself is the placebo that we're taking, and the vaccine has no actual, like, physiological response that makes you better?
Not like what he's saying.
Is that...
Or at least that's part of what he's saying.
Yeah.
Or he's saying that might have that effect.
I didn't know what this was, but it kind of turned into that. But yes, that is what I'm getting at. You're no safer by taking this vaccine than you were if you didn't take it. End the story.
Okay, so again, just to simplify this further, what you're saying is, like, from how we perceive it, you're saying the vaccine itself is a placebo, and this is like, we're not like, it's just there to make you feel better and like emotionally feel better. And
I don't want to answer for him, but I do want to say he could be saying that. I'm not 100% sure, and he could reiterate. I'm going to say that you could argue that effect is inherent in it, even if the vaccine does have an effect in itself, that it could have both. Actually, you could argue both.
a substance can be both a placebo. A placebo is just an arbitrary modifier we add on just to say that it also has an effect when it itself is not the cause of the effect. You know, it's sort of like saying this lights something on fire versus an actual fire which actually lights things on fire. The fire is literally burning it, while the other thing just seems to be burning it in the hypothetical space, in an abstract way. That's the approach. But sorry, just to I guess move.
No, I'm not
this.
trying to redirect the conversation here, but I'm saying if you were talking placebo effect, how does this not contribute to the vaccination? And make you better, even though it doesn't do anything. Like,
what does a placebo effect have to do with the?
So there is no, okay, all right, so just ignore that. Look, I don't know why we're pussyfooting around here. The vaccine isn't a placebo. The vaccine actually does have an effect. The vaccine keeps people from being hospitalized who might otherwise have been if they have gotten COVID when they weren't vaccinated. Right? The vaccine keeps people alive. The vaccine helps make sure our hospital or medical system isn't overwhelmed, but it still is being overwhelmed because so many people still aren't vaccinated, right? That's the issue, right? Like the vaccine does keep people alive, so we could just, it doesn't have anything to do with the placebo effect.
No, it does not. Who does the vaccine help, and who implements
it helps people. It helps people of all ages, right? In any cohort, but especially those who are at risk, right? The ones who are older, who have other comorbidities, right? Like it helps everyone, right? This is borne out.
Like a Kevlar vest.
This is borne out in the data, right? But that doesn't. Yes, it is. Well, sorry, what data? What data do you have? What data do you have?
In a way, no chance. It does not.
What data do you have to support that, please? Milwaukee.
All of it?
Okay, all right. Then give us some of it. Then give us some of it. Then give us some of it. Give us some of it.
There's a small percentage of data that suggests that if you are immunized, you will not contract the virus.
Yeah.
Okay.
So give us some of the data that says that this vaccination does not in any way make a change in the deadliness of the virus. Anything?
All right. How many percentage of people die from this virus? Can I ask you that?
That's a no. There's nothing.
Yeah, I was about to say,
lot
can we also make sure to qualify that by not something that you found on Alex Jones' website?
On Infowars.com? Whatever do you mean? That is the most reliable source on the internet. Bing.
Who is
I mean, if you're not convinced of the efficacy of the vaccine, we're probably not going to be able to convince you tonight. It's a whole big long discussion that's kind of a tangent from the main thing that we were talking about. So I just want to suggest
it was a
that
while for us. We've
First,
just been talking about placebo.
I don't
for
know
a half
who
hour.
Alex Jones is, and B, I don't know who Alex Jones is. I'm gonna drink my beer and not die of COVID. End the story.
Okay.
It's
Two
okay. Enjoy
connected things,
your
that's
beer. Can we
Sure.
talk about
I'm not
superstition
drink tonight.
Yeah. Okay.
rather than anti-vax? Because it's
Yeah.
although they're kind of related, it's really not the same thing.
Vaguely through placebos.
Oh no. The only reason I correlated anti-vax in this other conversation was because you brought the 13th floor, and I was like, no, is it not the same thing? To be honest, I have
Yeah, it's a
all
same
three
thing.
of my shots.
Yeah.
I feel any safer because I have my booster shot? No, I do not.
Yeah. So those things aren't the same things. But okay. That's great. That was a moment in time. But maybe come back some other night and we have like
No, man, I was just happy to be here and talk to you guys about this.
I meant Benja B, but like,
sorry.
I love you too, Brento. I love you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
White man, just like, oh, it must be talking about me. I'm just kidding.
Absolutely, you must talking about me.
Benja.
No, I just got back and
Okay.
hoping we can get back to wherever we're going.